Vanakkam. Welcome to this course on classics and neuroscience. We have been looking at functional organization of neurons and dendrites. So far we are only discussing neurons. In future videos we will be discussing the functional organization of dendrites. In this video we will be discussing how modern research first confirmed then challenged the idea of neuron doctrine. The classical neuron doctrine was first confirmed by modern research, then there were some challenges. Santiago Ramon y Cajal's last paper in 1933 was an exhaustive review supporting the idea of the neuron doctrine again. It was being heavily evaluated against the reticular theory or the continuation theory of Golgi. Later, actually much later, in the 1950s, there was the advent of electron microscope and the facility to record from individual neurons using microelectrodes and electronic amplifiers, voltage clamp method and other such developments in the field of physics, electronics and in general improvement in experimental approach. All these studies essentially supported the validity or the fundamental validity of the neuron doctrine. Remember, in our previous discussions we have mentioned that communication between neurons happens through electrical means was a suggestion made by Jack Eccles. This was not supported in his own experiments both in the peripheral system and also in the central systems. So, we also discussed how EPSPs and IPSPs were identified by Eccles and his team. In previous videos we have discussed this, but there were some specific cases where there was the presence of electrical synapses, where direct exchange of ions, direct flow of molecules happened from one cell to another cell. So, then it was being questioned, how does it challenge or support, or how does the advent or identification of the electrical synapse put the validity of the neuron doctrine. So, there were questions about neuronal ensembles that were created by continuity through electrical synapses and that can also transport small molecules. Also, Santiago Ramon y Cajal's idea that there was this dynamic polarization of the neuron suggested there was flow of information from dendrites to soma and axon and hillock and out into the axon. So, it was the direction in which this was flowing. In this case, if the dendrites are receiving information and if the axons are transmitting the pulses, what exactly is the role of the cell body or soma of the neuron? What exactly is the function of the dendritic branches? Because the dendritic branches usually are many in number when compared with the axonal collaterals. Do check out the dendritic branch of the Purkinje neuron in cerebellum. I will ask my students to share the relevant video from my previous course where I discuss the anatomy of the cerebellum, in particular the Purkinje neuron and the inputs and outputs to the Purkinje neuron. The most relevant video my students will share. Do check out how complex and how complicated, because each Purkinje neuron may have up to 500,000 dendrites, an average of 150,000 to 200,000, that is 2 lakh dendrites on an average. The maximum is about 500,000, 5 lakhs dendrites. That is a lot of dendrites. How does it receive information, process information? Mystery. And how are they organized? fantastic organization within the cerebellum. Do check the video. So, essentially using the principles of histology, the neuron doctrine was well supported. But if you ask the histologists questions about exactly what is the purpose of the impulses in the axon, or what is the purpose of the soma, and exactly how dendritic information is being integrated, they had no answer. All they knew was that there were these impulses that were being conducted. So, it was assumed that excited dendrites essentially transmitted impulses through branches towards the soma and into the axon, but the details of how this happened and was reserved for future research. With this, we come to the end of this video. In this video, we look at how modern research first confirmed the classical neuron doctrine and then challenged the classical neuron doctrine in the form of electrical synapses. Also, the challenges came in the form of questions about how the information was being integrated within the neuron. Thank you for your attention.